Live from Lagos, Nigeria's financial capital. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Business Incorporated. I am Bosin Amafayo on the program today. Let's get started. Reports say Barclays PLC and Citigroup helped South African competition regulator with information relating to the alleged rigging of the rand currency's exchange rate. The International Monetary Fund is to help Somalia print first banknotes in a quarter of a century. Plus, have you ever had grasshoppers as a delicacy in your meal? Well, there's a market for that rich source of protein, vitamin, and other minerals in northeast Nigeria. Let's get started. We'll talk about the grasshopper business later. Let's start with the markets as usual. Egyptian markets continue to trade water today, 1.14% at lunchtime, Nigeria. But that's since tapering off a little bit to about 0.88% as we speak. Meantime, the South African market, which is the largest exchange on the continent, about 0.75% in the green. The Nigerian market had about 0.44% about 2.5 hours ago, but that's since tapering off to about 0.27%. You can see the Kenyan Friday market close, 124.93 reading on the counter. Meantime, one of Nigeria's listed Tier 1 commercial bank, FCMB Group, has informed the Nigerian Stock Exchange of a reorganization of its management team, resulting in the stepping down of the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Ladi Balogun, as he completes the regulatory 10 years in office. A few years ago, the Central Bank of Nigeria sets 10 years as the limit of tenure for bank CEOs. The FCMB statement says Ladi Balogun will be replaced by Adam Nuru, an executive director in charge of development, as Balogun remains as the group CEO of the FCM Group effective March the 20th. Cross over to the Middle East and look at the markets largely in the red this Monday. Intraday with the Dubai leading the slide, dragged down by a decline in construction firm Arab Tech to a 5-year low. In Saudi Arabia, the news was all about crude oil, Russia overtaking Saudi Arabia as the world's #1 oil producer, because Saudi has been cutting back rapidly on the last November's agreement by OPEC and non-OPEC members to shave 1.7 million barrels per day. So Russia slightly ahead of Saudi Arabia. Oil prices trading higher today at the futures market. So, look at the Dubai financial markets, 1.15% in the red. The Qatar Stock Exchange slightly negative, 10,112, and the Saudi market around 7,115. Meantime, investors in Europe are eyeing earnings and fresh economic data from the zone, as well as monitoring for any more details from President Donald Trump on his economic policies. Let's get my colleague from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, Conrad Bilson, to start the week for us with a few of this story and others making the headlines. Good afternoon, Conrad. It's good to see you. Let's start with the big meeting of the Euro area finance ministers in Brussels to discuss the Greek bailout crisis. Any hope for Greece this time around?
I have to say, Bosun, hope is going to be a very scarce good after today's Euro finance ministers meeting, at least for the millions of Greek people who are going through so many hardships in order to keep the euro as their currency. And also, it's not very likely that the Greek government will see any debt relief, any way of relief for the amount of debt it pays or the way it pays back its debt. You know, the next major election here in the euro area is only away about 4 weeks. It's the election for the Dutch parliament in the Netherlands. Later this spring, the French people will vote for a new president. In both countries, the populist screaming is quite loud and shrill. Those politicians don't talk about the benefits of the euro. They talk about the potential risks for their national taxpayers. So it's quite likely that the Eurozone's finance ministers today will rather talk about more austerity, more fiscal discipline, instead of talking about how they want to find common ground and how they want to make the story of the euro attractive for all citizens of the Eurozone again.
Oh, yeah, but we're sticking with the zone. We have the German PPI out today, hitting the highest annual rate in almost 5 years. Then we have the zone's confidence, business confidence or consumer confidence data also out today. Put this together side by side for us. A PPI higher in the largest economy in Europe on one hand, and the consumer confidence data also on tap.
Well, Bosun, the stock market here in Frankfurt is in up mood today. As you can see, well, it doesn't really look like an upswing because the market, the DAX, it did a jump upwards this morning, and since then it more or less stayed on that level, but it stayed on the upside. 0.4% higher, the DAX at the moment. The German MDAX and the SDAX, which are the mid-cap and small-cap indices, climbed to new record highs today. Every piece of news about higher prices, be it producer prices or consumer prices, refuels the reflation trade on the markets. And that is that bonds are being sold because their yields become less attractive, with inflation rising, which also makes interest rates rise potentially. And on the other hand, shares become more attractive because, well, companies managing to increase their prices consequently will increase their earnings. And that's why shares are up. Also, gold is in demand, you know, the typical safe haven against inflation. In terms of the consumer confidence of the Eurozone, well, it's expected to have risen slightly from minus 4.9 to maybe minus 4.5% more or less. But I also have to tell you that predictions like this have proven to be rather shaky lately. For example, the German IFO index in January decreased while most of the economists had predicted an increase. So for markets people today, it's going to be not only interesting to see what the reading of this consumer confidence index will be, but also whether or not the economists were right with their predictions.